What's going on, folks? Your guy Tommy Gain here, TG Ice Cold Sports, America Sports Show. And I'm sad to report to all of you that yes, we are going to be talking about Taylor Swift. I'm sorry. I know. It's the most over-talked about thing in the world. Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. We don't even know if it's a real relationship yet. It's in the very beginnings. And who really cares? But it's become part of the storyline. And that's where we begin. Jets-Chiefs. Heck of a game. Early on, it looked like the Chiefs were running away with it. Instead, the Jets made a monstrous comeback. Really good on the Jets. Good on Zach Wilson. Putting together a nice game with all of America kind of looking at, Travis Kelce. The Sunday Night Football broadcast looking at Taylor Swift every 5 seconds. They were trying to spoil the party. And people are not happy about that last drive by the Chiefs because it seems like Mr. Goodell, went to the phones and said, hey, Taylor Swift up's in the box. We can't let her boyfriend lose this game. So let's get a couple of calls dialed up there. First, Mahomes scrambles for, 25 yards on third down, which was a gigantic move, but it was pretty cruelly on Jermaine Johnson. There was holding going on. Mahomes had all day because it was holding, and they missed the call. And even though they ended up holding on the Jets, it should have been offsetting penalties. Get it going again. But that's not what happened. And then Mahomes throws a terrible interception, and they called that back as well on a hinky holding call. 2 different times. Just everything going against the Jets. Some really ticky-tack calls. And I'm not someone who usually blames the refs. I don't believe in blaming the refs because if you blame the refs for your own downfalls, you have to blame the refs at all times because the refs are always going to make mistakes. They're human. But it was just very blatant and bad. And if I were a Jets fan, I'd be very upset. And then, on top of all that, Mahomes gets the ball running clear path to the end zone. He gets the first down, and instead of going into the end zone, he slides. What's the big deal? I'll tell you what the big deal was. They were up by 3 at the time. Touchdown. Make sure they cover. Because they were 9.5-point favorites. They would have been winning by 10. Instead, they actually just kneel it out from there. And if I was on the side of Chiefs 9.5, just saying I would be enormously upset if I were someone who put money down on that game. I didn't, but if I did, I would be livid. But of course, everything all revolved around Taylor Swift. She's like her own, she's like the sun, everything revolves around her. Meanwhile, like in another box, Aaron Rodgers was all unhappy. I bet he was probably happy later in the game when it looked like the Jets might have a chance, but what are you going to do? And then, after the game, Rodney Harrison's talking to Chris Jones, and he just rips into Zach Wilson, just rips into him, talking about how he's garbage, this and that, and this and that. And it's like, dude, what? Like, don't get me wrong. It's been bad times for Zach Wilson for a while now. It's not worked out the way they thought it would, him coming out of BYU. Obviously, he was taken 2nd overall, and he has not played like the 2nd overall pick. But, despite all that, he really played well last night, honestly. And after the game, he was blaming himself because he was the one who fumbled the ball away and allowed the Chiefs to get that last drive. They never touched the ball again. So it just seemed like kicking a man while he's down. Rodney Harrison, you got to be better than that. Just unnecessary all the way around. Seriously. Other than that, Taylor Swift obviously is huge in this country. Gigantic. Where, does she keep showing up to games just week after week after week after week? I mean, at this point, the NFL has to be shelling out the money for her to do this, right? They got to start, paying appearance fees. I mean, they're putting her in like their Instagram and their Twitter bios. I mean, it's insanity. Crazy town. Seriously. Ja'Marr Chase. He was not happy. The Bengals lost again on Sunday. He was very much not happy. He comes out. reporters are talking to him, and he pretty matter of fact says, I'm open. I'm always fucking open. I'm open. I'm open. And I get it. The Bengals have had a tough year, especially because, in 2021, they were the big underdogs that came out of nowhere, it felt like, and became Super Bowl contenders. They literally almost won the Super Bowl. And then last year, they seemed to cement their way in. They just barely missed the Super Bowl. And then this year, it's been so bad. Joe Burrow got a bag right before the season, and he has not played up to it yet. But in any case, man, you got to keep it in the house. You got to zip the lip and, keep it internal. If you have some problems with how you're being targeted, tell your friend Joe Burrow. They went to college together. It seems like one of those things where you have to say it all the time in every season. And it shouldn't really be surprising that players will talk out of turn because they always do. But it just seems so dumb. It just is a dumb thing to do because I think that Joe Burrow can turn it around. This Bengals team can turn it around if they get in the right circumstance. But that won't happen if you have morale go down, through the floor because you're talking out of turn about your franchise quarterback. They're going to get rid of you long before they get rid of him because they gave him way too much money to be even imagining picking a wide receiver talking out of turn over you. So you got to fall in line a little bit. I mean, there is, there are tiers here, There is a line starting with the quarterback, starting with the owner, going to the quarterback, then the coach, probably down to you. I mean, it's just how it goes in the NFL. You can't be doing this stuff. You just can't. You can't. Now, everyone's talking about how Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick, and that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, he's an incredible quarterback. And I had the ultimate Caleb Williams weekend, I would say at least. Start with Saturday. So my Colorado Buffaloes take on the USC Trojans. And I was planning on being there just tailgating, watching the game nearby. But instead, our good friend Zach Lyons, thank you, Zach Lyons, I was able to secure me a ticket. And that was awesome. Incredible performance by the Buffs. After getting their lungs ripped out the week before, they made it a close game, lost by 7. You can make a lot of things about, time management, things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're USC, you got to be worried that if Colorado's offense can do this to you, and their defense was able to make some stops. I mean, obviously, they still scored 48. USC did. But it's one of those things where you're going to take on Oregon, a team that absolutely slapped Colorado last week. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. Caleb Williams played really well. And I think any team that gets him number 1 overall in the draft will probably be very happy. And that's where we switch over to Sunday. So on Sunday, my Chicago Bears took on the Denver Broncos, my second favorite team, because, I've lived in Denver for a long time. Both teams 0-3. Both teams considering, hey, is this going to be a tank year? Lots of questions about that. Bears take a big lead, and then storming back comes the Broncos, and then Broncos end up winning the game. Fields fumbles the ball. Big surprise there. And the Bears lose. Fields didn't play poorly, per se. He played well. Actually got over 300 passing yards for the first time in his career. But at the same time, 0-4, you lose to what could be the second worst team in the NFL. I'm thinking it's tank time. 0-17, you go get Caleb Williams. And right now, the Panthers are in line to be the number 2 overall pick. And the Bears have their pick because they traded the number 1 pick to the Panthers so they could get Bryce Young. So the Bears will have 2 first-round picks, and that could be the number 1 and the number 2. And Caleb Williams is a little bit too much of a superstar to almost turn down at this point. My good friend Henry Collins made the point, hey, will he come out of college to go to the Bears? Because his dad had made comments saying, oh, he might stay in college if he doesn't get the right team. And all I got to say is, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And it's tough to go back to school when you have a chance to make that much money. And plus, the Bears would probably build around him. There's a lot of things like that going on. So it's a risk I think the Bears should be willing to make. I know my fellow Bears fans are all very upset, very angry, but folks, I think it's time to go head first into the abyss. Into the abyss. Time to go head first into the abyss and to finally, hit rock bottom. I think it's time to hit rock bottom. Time to hit rock bottom. I think that's what's it. In NBA news today, Jimmy Butler shows up to the season opening press conference with like an emo haircut, like long hair, like flowing to the side, covering his face. He had to like brush out of his face. And it was pretty funny. It's pretty funny. It's much funnier even to point out the fact that, the Heat weren't able to get Damian Lillard. He went to the Bucks, and he could be upset about that. And it's almost like he's emo over that. That's kind of funny. But, early season shenanigans. Early season shenanigans. I mean, Jimmy Butler's one of the most colorful players in the league. I think people love him for that. People in Chicago loved him for that. People in Minnesota, not as much. But, it is a funny thing to do. And I guess it's also funny to point out the whole thing with Damian. But also, is it maybe a little nod? Like a little nod? Like, maybe you should have done a little more to get Damian. Just a little more. A little more to keep him going to the Bucks. To keep it, because he pretty clearly wanted to go to the Heat. And instead, they trade him to the Bucks. So, I don't know. The whole word around that trade was that he wanted to go to the Heat and that the Trailblazers basically said, oh, you want a trade? We'll give you a trade. And they brought him to Milwaukee instead. Finally, and it's tough to talk about this, my Chicago Cubs. They blew it hard. Hard. I think early on in September, they had like a 92% chance of making the playoffs, and they missed the playoffs. Just down the stretch, pitching was not where it should have been at all, especially in the bullpen. They need to bolster the starting rotation as well, but the bullpen was a real problem. That series against the Braves, they kept blowing leads. Seiya Suzuki misses that easy fly ball to send it to the ninth, and they just seem to keep doing that time and time again. The Cubs need to make some changes in the offseason. They're going to hit free agency. I think they're going to add some arms. I think that this is a good start. It's a good start. People didn't think the Cubs would even get this far, so let's hold out hope here. But man, does it suck. Does it suck getting just that close and just wiping yourself off. I was hoping that the Cubs would win their last couple and the Marlins would lose their last couple, so the Marlins would have to play one inning of baseball against the Mets because they had suspended that game, and because Mets were the home team, they couldn't just call it even though the Marlins were in the lead. And if it ended up being a tie between the Cubs and the Marlins for a wild card spot, they would have had to play that inning to be able to determine who gets the wild card spot. I was hoping that at least would happen. It didn't. But whatever. What are you going to do? Go Cubs go. Tough scenes all around. Cody Bellinger is probably not going to be back, but who knows? We'll see. In any case, folks, thank you all for watching and or listening. Please subscribe to Ice Cold Sports on Twitter, Instagram. Go to, that's at Ice Cold SPRTS, and at Tommy SGHAN on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Ice Cold Sports TikTok is Tommy Gann TikTok. Other than that, that's about it, folks. Thank you all for watching and or listening. I'm Tommy Gann. This has been Ice Cold Sports. See you guys. And I like Taylor Swift, by the way. I think her music's great.